Bitcoin has no CEO. No central bank controls its supply. Nobody can simply decide to create another million coins. And yet, every few minutes, thousands of computers around the world somehow agree on who owns what. So how does Bitcoin actually work? In the next few minutes, I'm going to explain Bitcoin's 21 million limit, mining, the difficulty adjustment, halvings, satoshis, transaction fees, and who actually controls the network. By the end, Bitcoin should make a lot more sense. Let's start with the number almost everyone has heard before: 21 million. Under Bitcoin's current consensus rules, there will never be more than roughly 21 million Bitcoin. But those coins did not all exist when Bitcoin launched. New Bitcoin enters circulation gradually through a process called mining. And unlike traditional currencies, that new supply does not continue forever. The amount of new Bitcoin created keeps decreasing over time until new issuance eventually approaches zero. And here is the important part. The 21 million limit is not a promise from a company. There is no Bitcoin CEO saying, "Trust me, we won't create more." It is part of the rules Bitcoin participants independently verify. If someone creates a block that violates those rules, Bitcoin nodes can reject it. That means Bitcoin's scarcity comes from rules that can be independently verified and enforced. But how do new Bitcoin actually enter circulation? That brings us to mining. Bitcoin miners use specialized computers to compete for the right to add the next block of transactions to the blockchain. When a miner produces a valid block, it can receive two forms of compensation: newly issued Bitcoin, known as the block subsidy, and transaction fees paid by people using the network. Together, these make up the miner's block reward. Mining also plays another important role. It makes changing Bitcoin's transaction history extremely expensive. A miner cannot simply open the blockchain, change an old transaction, and expect everyone else to accept it. The network continues building on valid blocks according to the rules participants enforce. And this is where one of Bitcoin's most interesting mechanisms appears: the difficulty adjustment. Bitcoin targets an average of roughly one new block every 10 minutes. But imagine thousands of new mining machines suddenly join the network. With more computing power, miners would begin finding blocks faster. Bitcoin automatically responds to this. Every 2016 blocks, which is approximately every 2 weeks, the network compares how long those blocks actually took to produce. If blocks were being found too quickly, mining difficulty increases. If blocks were being found too slowly, difficulty decreases. The goal is to keep the average block interval near 10 minutes. There is no manager changing the setting. No company holds a meeting. No central bank votes on it. The adjustment follows rules built into the protocol. This allows Bitcoin to respond to massive changes in mining power while continuing to produce blocks at a relatively predictable rate. Now we get to another famous Bitcoin concept: the halving. When Bitcoin launched, the block subsidy was 50 Bitcoin. After 210,000 blocks, that reward was cut in half. 50 became 25, then 12.5, then 6.25. And in 2024, it fell again to 3.125 Bitcoin per block. This process continues roughly every 4 years. Each halving reduces the amount of new Bitcoin entering circulation. So even if demand for Bitcoin grows, the creation of new supply follows a predetermined declining schedule. This is how Bitcoin gradually moves toward its approximately 21 million coin limit. Instead of a committee deciding how much new money should be created next year, Bitcoin follows rules that were known in advance. But that creates an obvious question. If miners receive newly created Bitcoin for producing blocks, what happens when there are eventually no new Bitcoin left to issue? Bitcoin does not suddenly stop working. Remember, miners can receive compensation from two sources: newly issued Bitcoin and transaction fees. As the block subsidy continues declining over the coming decades, transaction fees are expected to become increasingly important to miner revenue. Eventually, when new issuance effectively reaches zero, transaction fees remain available as an incentive for miners to include transactions and provide computing power to the network. So Bitcoin was designed to continue operating even after new coin issuance ends. Now there is another question beginners ask all the time. If there can only be 21 million Bitcoin, how could billions of people possibly use it? The answer is divisibility. You do not need to own one whole Bitcoin. One Bitcoin can be divided into 100 million smaller units. Those units are called satoshis, or sats, named after Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. One Bitcoin equals 100 million satoshis. So if one whole Bitcoin becomes extremely valuable, people can simply transact using smaller units. And dividing Bitcoin into smaller pieces does not increase the total supply. Imagine one pizza. You can cut that pizza into 4 slices, or 8, or 100. You created more pieces, but you did not create more pizza. Bitcoin works the same way. Divisibility changes the size of the units people can use. It does not create additional Bitcoin. Now we arrive at perhaps the most important question of all. If Bitcoin has no CEO, who actually controls it? The answer is more interesting than simply saying, nobody. Different participants have different roles. Developers can write software and propose changes. But developers cannot force everyone in the world to run that software. Miners use computing power to create blocks. But miners cannot simply invent new rules and force everyone else to accept them. Bitcoin nodes independently verify transactions and blocks according to the rules they choose to enforce. Think of a node as an independent referee. A miner might produce a block, but if that block violates the rules a node is enforcing, that node can reject it. For example, imagine a miner tries to create far more Bitcoin than the block subsidy allows. The miner may have spent enormous amounts of electricity producing that block. But a node following Bitcoin's existing rules can still look at it and say, invalid, rejected. That distinction is extremely important. Miners produce blocks. Nodes verify the rules. Developers propose software. Users choose what software they run. No single one of these groups has unilateral control over Bitcoin. For Bitcoin's fundamental rules to change successfully, people throughout the network would have to choose to adopt software implementing those changes. That makes Bitcoin very different from traditional financial systems. A central bank can change monetary policy. A company can change the rules of its platform. A bank can change what services it offers. Bitcoin does not have one institution sitting at the top of the system with that kind of authority. Instead, thousands of independent participants around the world interact using a shared set of rules. And once you understand those roles, Bitcoin becomes much easier to understand. Mining helps produce blocks and secure the blockchain. The difficulty adjustment helps keep blocks arriving at a relatively predictable rate. The halving reduces new supply over time. The 21 million limit creates scarcity under Bitcoin's existing rules. Satoshis make that fixed supply highly divisible. Transaction fees provide another source of compensation for miners. And nodes independently verify that the rules they accept are actually being followed. Bitcoin can seem complicated because words like mining, halvings, nodes, satoshis, and difficulty adjustment are usually thrown around without context. But when you connect the pieces, the system starts to make much more sense. And that is what the Bitcoin Atlas is about. Not predicting Bitcoin's price tomorrow. Not telling you that one coin is going to make you rich. actually understanding how Bitcoin works. Because before deciding what Bitcoin means for you, it helps to understand what Bitcoin actually is. And there is a lot more to learn.